throw us into the background for now.
Yeah. Hey, everybody, we're going to give it about 2 more minutes, let some people sign on. So we'll start at about 3:03, get things moving. All right, we will get started. So, hi, everybody. Welcome for those joining. For those still coming in, welcome. Thanks for joining us today for our Resilient Marketing webinar. Depending on where you are in the East Coast, West Coast of the world, you're either just sitting down for lunch or you're in the middle of your afternoon coffee break, hopefully. So sit back and enjoy your lunch or your coffee, and we'll keep this as virtually engaging as possible. And we'll get things moving. So this webinar today is going to be about an hour long. We'll try to keep it on time. I know that everyone's on a time crunch. We have a question from Jade. This will be available after as a recording. If you have to stop off at any time, no worries. But this is part of a 3-part webinar series that we're putting together at Google for Google for Startups in combination with the Google Ads team. And it's really to help you guys, one, learn more about messaging, and then two, learn what you can do about it and how you can pivot your content in this new world. So a couple housekeeping items before we actually start. Feel free to submit all comments and questions on the side, live chat. Just be careful. The live chat is about 30 seconds delayed for me and Paul. So if we don't see your question right away, we'll definitely try and get to it at the end. Feel free to add it back in just because we're delayed, and we'll keep moving to make sure that we stay on time. If at any time it gets fuzzy or we break up, just put it in the chat as well, and we'll pause and make sure that we have proper connection going forward. So let's jump into it. What is the agenda? So on the agenda today, we're really trying to keep this high level for the first webinar. So think high level trends in people's mindsets and behaviors. We're going to give you some tips and ideas to ensure that your content and the messaging of your company is on point with the changing landscape and behaviors due to the new COVID-19 virtual world we're living in, and recommendations on how you should be thinking about your digital marketing strategy at the end. Just to know, this is not like a tutorial, so don't think that you're going to be getting in-depth Google Ads messaging from this webinar. That will be coming in the next two. This is more high level because we have to get your messaging and your content right. We want you thinking about that first before we start pivoting into some of the deeper parts of the business. We have 4 founders that are going to join us today to kind of give their message on what they did to pivot either their business model or at least part of their business, and the messaging and how they did that as well. So let's jump right in and do some introductions on myself and Paul. So my name is Justin Abazna. I'm the America's Partnership Lead for Google for Startups, which means that I work with all the accelerator, incubator, and tech hub partners that Google for Startups partners with in North and South America. So we have people from LATAM and from the United States and from Canada here. And you probably, most of you, work at one of our partners' tech hubs. So I work with those tech hubs to bring the best of Google to you guys and give you our support. Joined by me is Paul Worrell. I'll let him introduce himself in a second, but Paul is an account strategist on our new business team. And what that means is Paul's everyday life, he's a humble guy, he's not going to tell you this, he is an expert at bringing on new business to Google. So when someone who is just starting out as a startup or a company that hasn't been on Google yet, Paul is the guy that we go to who's responsible for bringing them on. And I'll let Paul introduce himself now. Go ahead, Paul. Well, I think you're muted. Hold on one second.
Sorry about that. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for hopping on today. So as Justin mentioned, I'm an account strategist on the new business team. So expanding upon that, I'm working with mostly startups and small businesses that are just beginning their first days at Google. And so really what that looks like is first identifying, for one, what type of strategy should we be running as a business, and then expanding on that to, building out campaigns within Google Ads and optimizing those campaigns over time.
Awesome. So when you're thinking of your digital marketing campaigns and you're thinking of your messaging and your content, ask those questions in the chat when it's applicable or at the end, and Paul's the guy that'll answer them for you. So why are we doing this? And what is the point of this webinar series going forward? Well, the real answer is there's a new normal, right? COVID-19 has kind of changed the way we're looking at business going forward, and it's probably impacted most of your businesses already in the last few months. And around the world at the Google for Startups stage, we've seen different founders stepping up, different businesses stepping up, solving problems, innovating, and showing a lot of resilience. We also realize that now more than ever, running a startup in a business requires a lot of help. So whether you're just starting your business now, whether you're trying to keep the lights on, whether you're scaling to meet the new demand, if that's one of the things that you're doing, we're here to help. And this is one of the ways that we're starting to help with some content and knowledge that we could bring from the Google side. So how are we doing it and what are we doing? We're really doing 3 things. We broke it down into 3 buckets. First is keeping you informed. If you go to the Google for Startups website, we now have resources and tools on the landing page there that you can learn about pretty much all of the different resources around Google. We've aggregated into one spot for you. So as a startup, you can go and see what we have to offer. Second thing is we're doing our best to help founders acclimate to the new world and the new concerns. One of the biggest concerns that we heard when we asked founders what they're doing is, how do I pivot my messaging in my business? And then on the second part of that is, how do I work with Google Ads to make that happen? And that's kind of what we're doing here today to figure that point out. And then the third thing is providing support wherever we can. And this is through our partners, through our programs that we have throughout the network and throughout North and South America. So when we look at how we respond to the crisis or to COVID-19, it's really, we bring it down into three phases. The first one is uncertainty, which is what we've been kind of dealing with for the last 2 months. And that's strictly reactive response, right? Responding to the crisis, figuring out, okay, how do we mitigate risk? How do we cut costs? How do we make sure that we're going to be set up for success and make sure that we're going to survive just the initial shock? The second phase is the rebound, which is rebuilding for when demand returns, you're ready to re-enter the business world with a vengeance. Right now, we are still in phase one, but the light is kind of shining through into phase two. And this is where it's a perfect time for you to start thinking, instead of reactively, start thinking proactively of what you're going to do for your messaging and for your content going forward. And that's where we're going to really try and stick today. Because phase three recovery is, again, an unknown of when we have a full economic recovery. We're not going to worry about that right now. We're worrying about phase one into phase two. So without further ado, we'll dive into some content. And the first thing we're going to talk about is behavioral trends. So a quick note on this, when we're talking about it, we're trying to keep this to an hour. We could spend hours, probably days, talking about consumer behavior and mindsets. I read an article the other day. Experts are saying that this crisis is so different from others because it's not just a financial crisis, but it's actually a behavioral crisis where you're told to stay in your homes and you're changing your daily behaviors. So naturally, when people are trying to change their behaviors and they're wondering what to do, how to do certain things, they turn to Google to search for stuff. How do I cook this new meal? What do home workouts look like? Things like that. So Google can gather a lot of data on the changing trends that are happening across the globe. And these are high-level trends that we want you to take a look at. And when you're reading about them and Paul's telling you about them, think about how they are impacting your business, or think about how you as a business can lean more into these trends and change what you're doing to kind of meet these changes. So with that, Paul, I'll turn it over to you to kind of go over the consumer trends that we have here on this next slide.
Perfect. Thanks, Justin. So as you mentioned, we're noticing a few different trends that are happening, and a lot of this is really based on the data that Google has gathered through Google search, based on people's search behavior, different activity that we're seeing on our side. So I'll go through each of these one at a time and think about how these can apply to your business. But then we'll go into based on these trends, following this, based on these trends, what are some of the ways that you as a startup and as a business owner can adapt your messaging, and what are some ideas that we have for tackling that? So the first one we're seeing is people are, for one, assembling critical information and content that they need to weather the storm. So overall, we're seeing media consumption has increased approximately 60%, I believe. And then video views are cooking up to about 31%. So content consumption is at its highest. And now more than ever, people are searching for ways to get products, services, food they need. We've seen increased searches for delivery, in stock, pickup. Now more than ever, I know for myself, like many others, people were searching for home workout equipment. And if you try to go to the store and find one, it's very hard to find any type of inventory that's available to help you in that category. So people are doing research to find that out before they go out in public and go to a store and potentially find themselves having to come back empty-handed. So that's the first trend we're seeing. The second one is people are coming together in a new way. obviously, many of us are at home, and rather than us having the opportunity to do potentially a live event, I know I saw someone here from the Bay Area. Where instead of gathering in person, we have to do this virtually. So people are finding new ways of discovering and nurturing new connections and nurturing relationships that we haven't seen before. A couple examples of that, what we've seen with the search data is more people are searching for with me searches are up 100%. So people asking about baking cookies with me, studying with me, up 54%. So this just shows that more and more people are looking for ways of connecting with other people and also connecting with the broader community.
Yeah, and Paul, I got a question inbound here saying, how can we determine trends specific to our business using search data? And I just want to point out, if you haven't gone to Google Trends or Google Consumer Insights, you should go to those online. It's at our Think with Google website. Google Trends can give you data on any search topic across Google. So when Paul's given these insights and he's given these numbers, you could see the jump and spike in search, such as home workout equipment. You could see what it was in February versus what it is in March, and things like that. And Consumer Insights is another one to look at. So that's definitely something to take into consideration. Sorry, Paul, take it away again.
Yeah, Justin, and expanding on that, using search trend data, search trends, that's a good resource to look at. For one, you can look at all the trends related to the coronavirus or COVID. So we have a whole resource page dedicated to just what we've seen as what people are searching for related to the virus, which is something to keep a pulse on. But secondly, but also thinking about, what are the top category trends or category keywords, that you should pay attention to. So for one, thinking about your own products or services or any type of value proposition that you add, and using the search trend data to see, has there been any type of substantial impact related to your category? So one obvious one would be, if you're an e-commerce company, search volume for e-commerce and purchasing goods online has increased substantially. So something to consider there. So fourth, jumped one here. So the third one is around adjusting routines and schedules. So I know many of you are probably working from home. If you're not, maybe we should advise that. But I know for myself personally, I'm holding my breath that one of the dogs doesn't come pawing or barking at the door. So like many people, we're adjusting to a new way of working, a new way of living, where it's very hard to tell the difference between where our professional lives end, work lives, and our personal lives. So we've seen significant search volume for tips for working at home, ways of adapting to the gig economy. So for many gig economy workers, as you can imagine, Uber unemployment, specifically for picking up and dropping off individuals, or transportation, that's been heavily impacted. So there's been a huge spike in unemployment. And so what we've seen is a workforce that's adapting and becoming resilient and searching for new ways of finding work. So obviously searches for freelance work are at a high. We've also seen a uptick in any type of delivery or home services jobs that people can do, which has been really interesting to see. Also, lastly, on this trend here is we've also noticed that creatively the content producers, or even the businesses that are typically producing content, have gotten a lot more creative with the type of content that they're using, just given that many of the resources that are typically available are no longer available at this time. So people are getting creative and finding new ways of adapting to this new routine. Fourth item is looking at ways of appreciating and praising the heroes that have stepped up in a critical moment. So not just thinking about the healthcare workers that have come to the front lines to help the community, but also the employees, the delivery people that are are out there trying to help us live as normal lives as possible. So what we're seeing is more and more people are searching for the good. People are searching for good news. They're not just searching for the bad news, and they're also searching for ways to thank and support the people that are helping support the community, such as the healthcare workers, teachers, even grocery store employees, and people like that. So the fifth point here, see if we have any questions. No. So the fifth trend that we're noticing is people are looking for ways to adapt their physical and psychological habits to fit their needs. So as we mentioned, and as we've mentioned before, finding ways of having home workouts, or finding ways of keeping things interesting with their loved ones or the people that they may be in isolation with. So we've seen a significant lift in the searches for at-home workouts, for headspace and daily meditations. Also, people looking for ways of doing home facials, or even for self-education, such as searches for online degrees, or learn Spanish online. That's all in all what we've seen in the data is people are adapting and trying to find new and creative ways of keeping life interesting and taking care of themselves to continue their personal growth. And then lastly is people are seeing their favorite experiences in a whole new way. And so I think one of the primary examples of this is how rather than having the typical experiences that we have in person, obviously many of them are taking place over virtual, right? And so we've seen, I know for myself personally, I had a few friends of mine that had their wedding posted for this month, and instead did this whole experience virtually. And so as an activity, we all submitted videos, speaking about the couple and things like that. So people life isn't necessarily on pause, and what we're seeing is more and more people are searching for ways to adapt their current experiences that they typically would have in a normal environment, and enjoying those through new avenues such as virtual.
Nice. Virtual wedding. That's a new one. I didn't know that. That's pretty crazy. Awesome. So thanks, Paul. That's good insight into some consumer trends, and some of those may seem obvious to you, but in all honesty, it's important to just have them written down and thinking about okay, how does this affect my business, and what can I do to kind of adapt to these changes going forward. So now that we got that high level idea of how consumers are thinking and how they're kind of changing behavior slightly, let's dive into some ideas and how we could change our messaging and our content. So, and most of these may not need to be big changes, right? So these may be small changes that you could pivot with, like a little extra content on your social, or maybe a little extra messaging on your website. And then some may be drastic pivots where you have to change your business plan or change what you're doing. It's all very dependent on your business. So these 5 ideas, and we'll dive into each one of these and have one of our founders kind of discuss how they've changed, not necessarily for one idea, but for a lot of these different ideas, how they've changed their business or their messaging throughout. And the first one here is being helpful as the needs evolve. Paul, if you just give a quick, insight into what this means, and then we'll have Jasmine take over with a little example.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. So be helpful. As Justin mentioned, many of these ideas are relatively straightforward, but what we're looking to do is think about what are the ways that we can adjust our messaging, our value proposition, our business model to adapt to the current state of things. And so the biggest trend that we've seen has been, businesses finding ways to be helpful. And what that means is, for one, giving customers credible information, detailed information that is up to date, finding new value propositions to highlight. And then from a business standpoint, this could be, helping customers proactively with cancellations, refunds, and any type of customer service that they might need during this time, or even offering any additional free program or free product that you might be able to offer. We've seen a lot of good examples of this, and I know we have a good example for you guys here today.
Yeah. So if anyone doesn't know Gooder is a surplus food management startup. So they have a technology and a logistics system that helps restaurants get rid of unnecessary or food, and they deliver to people who need it. And they've transitioned part of their business to help and be helpful in this era. And without further ado, I'll let Jasmine step in here and give a little bit more. Hey, Jasmine.
Hey, Justin, hey, Paul, thanks so much for having me. Absolutely, you're right. I think in times of crisis, you do have to be ready to pivot. And what we've done at Gooder is we've always lived by our motto, which is feed more, waste less. What we realized once everything was taking place, we partnered with Atlanta Public Schools. We started to work with the city and the county because we knew that people were going to have issues with access to food. While at the same time, we knew that tons of businesses were closing. So one of the very first things that we did from a marketing message was we put out the notion that you can create a one-time pickup request with Gooder, which is something that we've never done. Mostly all of our customers have to go through an onboarding process with us. But as soon as this happened, we created a simple Google form and started allowing people to request a one-time pickup. So all these restaurants that were closing, that were, not knowing what they were going to do with all their excess food, now had a solution. And then we really used social media to push that out, really started to look at some of our ad messaging and understood that people were going to be having excess food and Gooder could come in and get that food to people in need. So it was a very simple message. Please don't let good food go to waste during this time. At the same time, a lot of people were looking to see how they could help. How could they support businesses like Gooder and others that were doing positive things during the coronavirus pandemic? And so what we started talking about is, what does it really cost us to provide the services that we are providing for so many families here in Metro Atlanta? How much does it cost us to send groceries to the door of a senior citizen versus to a family? So giving people a lot of different ways that they can help you, it makes your job a lot easier. So that messaging is key, making sure that you're hitting all the points that are going to ultimately help you do what you do in your business.
Awesome. Thanks, Jasmine. And that's a fantastic approach to that as well. So we do have a question here. Will all these new ways of doing business virtually still be relevant after the COVID-19 pandemic? Well, the question is, will all these things doing business virtually be relevant? Well, you can see right here, there's a relevancy of not doing virtual, but actually being there in the moment. And Jasmine, I'd have to assume, but you tell me, as business is probably very busy right now, but being helpful now has got to help you out down the road with partnerships with some of these communities.
Absolutely, Justin. I can't tell you the number of customers that we were kind of pitching to, trying to sell to, that through this pandemic have came on board to say, hey, I remember hearing from you. I remember what you were doing. How can we work together now? And then also, how can we work together in the future under this new normal? So we do believe that a lot of things are going to change. I think the world that we once knew, as I've been saying, BC, right, before COVID-19 coronavirus, is way different. And so things I do think are going to go back to being the same in some instances, but I was just in Costco earlier today, and now they've made it mandatory that just to enter their store, you have to wear a mask. We're seeing a lot of teachers that are looking at, maybe we go to teaching 2 days a week virtually and having students only in the classroom 3 days a week. So I'm hearing a lot of things. So I will say that it's going to be about a 50-50 split to answer your question. That we're going to see people that are going to go back to normal, but we're going to see a lot of things that are changing.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jasmine, for joining. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much.
We'll see you.
Bye.
All right. That was awesome. And we'll move on to the next one here. So the second messaging item is forging new communities and connections. So, Paul, if you just want to run us through this before we bring Shani on, that'd be amazing.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Justin. So forging new communities and connections, what does this really mean for your business? What are the ways that, you can be out there within the community, either it be consumers, the broader community, or even the community of your customers. And so we found some great examples of this. What this may look like is thinking about the ways that you can connect not just locally within the community that you serve, but also globally. So we've seen a good example of that would be what we're doing here today with, us having to put together a webinar to bring us together. a few examples we've seen is also businesses are finding ways of creating community with directly, either through social media or hosting online virtual events, or even finding ways of connecting consumers. And if you're a B2B company, thinking about what are the brands that you could potentially connect with other creators that are helping to actually forge communities during this time. And so a community could be one that engages with one another. It could also be people that come together to hear a common message or to gather around a certain initiative. So thinking about the ways that you can do that from a business model standpoint, or even help participate this new social dynamic that we have related to, co-viewing, co-commenting, physically and virtually.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I know, even just like workouts and all those things that I see all my friends doing now with communities, new communities is one thing, but we have a great example here with Possip and Shani, the CEO. Now I am going to apologize in advance to Shani because she asked me to switch this to parent school feedback tool, and it says parent teacher here, so that is my fault. But we will bring on Shani here to tell her story about Possip and how they've tweaked their business model for this new COVID-19 era. Hi, Shani.
Yeah, great. Hi, Justin. Hi, Paul. Thanks so much. As Justin was sharing, previous to COVID, how our platform worked is we asked parents for routine feedback about their child's experience at school. As you all know, school's not really in session. So one of the things we had to do was change our question so that it really reflected on what the reality was now. And so now our question, instead of asking parents, are they happy with their child's school this week? We ask, is your child's school meeting your needs? And that's because what a lot of school districts, particularly serving high populations of low-income families, we're finding is just some of the basic needs had to be met first before they could move on to some of the other priorities. And the idea of forging new communities and connections, we've done a few things. One is, as Jasmine was sharing, now we're in a space where everyone has so many hats that they're wearing at once. So a parent is now also a teacher, is also now working at a business. So they've got 3 to 5 roles they're working on. And so that actually led us to forge a much larger community. So whereas before we would mostly just focus on talking to principals and district administrators, now we talk to parents because parents are now teachers. We talk to teachers. We talk to school administrators, district administrators. And so we broaden out our community. Possip created a forum within our platform. So now our school administrators can talk to each other on the forum, to the idea of forging new communities. Also on Instagram, you'll see next week is Teacher Appreciation Week. We're doing giveaways each day of the week to help just kind of like reinforce the sense of community that we're all connected. And then we just really lean into content. So before the pandemic, we probably, if anything, maybe did like 1 webinar a month. We now do closer to 2 to 3 webinars a week. And they're 15-minute power sessions and they're designed for either parents or educators, a way for them to come on really quickly, absorb some information and go on. And it's helped us stay in constant conversation, both with our current customers, as well as with future customers and prospects. And so we've just realized there's, like you all were saying earlier, people are so hungry for information and for a partnership that just by us providing no cost content to them, has created a lot of value and also just a deepening of a relationship. So those are just a few of the ways. Oh, the only other thing I wanted to add is partnership. So with a lot of our webinars now, we bring in speakers from other organizations, experts. And so we just really expanded our network. And so it's also allowed for a lot of cross marketing because, for example, even with the teacher giveaways, if you you'll see on Instagram, we're working with a couple of local small businesses. They need support at this time. So we're paying them for some of the services that we're going to be giving away, but they're also giving us a really great deal. So we're able to market the coffee shops and an online virtual fitness. We're going to do Movement Monday. So we're going to give away a virtual, membership to an online training, and we're doing Wake Up Wednesday. So we're working with a local coffee shop there. But that's also a way to, again, expand our community outside of just folks who are working in education. So those are just a few of the things that we're doing to forge new communities and connections.
That's awesome. Thank you, Shani. And it's interesting when you're talking about, bringing in the experts, because that's exactly what we did, bringing in you guys. So we appreciate you being here, especially and talking about the new communities and your content, those 15-minute webinars that you do. Is that online somewhere, publicly available?
It is online. We actually, so we have some recent ones online. We're actually now doing a partnership with businesses also where they can do these webinars for their team members. So we're not leaving them up for as long because now it's a kind of also a product that we're offering to businesses so that they can help their parents who don't have to be teachers figure out how to teach at home and be employees. But we do still have some content that's still online, and you can find it. And also our blogs you can also find online as well.
Awesome. Find the blogs. And then that's the perfect example of content creation to then lead to partnerships too. That's another great way of doing it. So Shani, thank you so much for stopping by, and we appreciate the intelligence. All right, moving on. Number 3. So adjusting timing for a 24/7 cycle. This one's interesting because I think we all could agree that our timing is really screwed up right now. I think it's like almost like we're in airport mode where you could wear your pajamas at night, you could eat dessert in the morning. It doesn't really matter. And I know that one of the things that was interesting is podcasts is actually spiking right now at 2 a.m. where it used to spike at 5 p.m. when people were on their way home. It's now a 2 a.m. spike, which I thought was interesting. But Paul, anything you'd like to add here on adjusting timing for the 24/7 cycle?
Yeah, sure, Justin. So I think the biggest call out on this slide here is, and Shani provided a great example, which is around publishing often, right? We're adapting to new times of day, and as you mentioned, Justin, people are searching for podcasts later in the night and are engaging with content at times that were previously not a part of the normal routine. And so for this is a new opportunity with connect with consumers more often. And given that, with what we're seeing, not just from a increase in content consumption, but also the adjusting in timing, this leads an opportunity for you as a business to put out content frequently, often, get in front of your customers as much as possible. And then, also figure out what are the ways that you can adjust your business model and present the solutions that you offer to be more on a 24/7 cycle.
Awesome, yeah. And we have Civic Eagle with us today. They're a policy app. Their policy app, Enview, is actually available, but they help break down federal and state legislation for you to fully understand how it benefits and affects you. And we have the Chief Product Officer, Yemi, with us here. Hi, Yemi. How we doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. And Yemi, I know that we have the 24/7 cycle here for you to talk about, but you also forge new communities and are doing good for in a time of need. So I'd love for you to just talk about all those three, if you can.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. And I'm happy to talk about how we've reacted to COVID so far and what our plans are coming up. So when COVID first happened, the first reaction that we got, not only internally from our team, but also external response, was that, hey, you all have an app that investigates legislation, both state and federal, and have an easy to use platform for helping people discover legislation. And so what we did was we decided to round up all the legislation we could find that related to COVID-19, the different response legislation, so everything from the CARES Act to the state responses. And we created a free digest, pretty much rounded up the legislation, and we send it out in a weekly or bi-weekly newsletter to anyone who signs up, regardless if they are a customer or prospect or just someone in the community. We don't sell to just everyone. We sell to, we're a B2B company. We sell to organizations and businesses, but in alignment with our mission and alignment with the opportunity that we're faced with, we decided to open it up to the public, and in good faith, hopefully, in our effort to be helpful to the larger community, we're hoping that that'll give us some returns on prospects and leads. Some other things that we're doing to be responsive, similar to PASA and Shani's company working on webinars, we're putting together that content as well. And we want to come at it from a perspective of like the timeliness of COVID. So the question for a lot of our customers right now and our clients are that they're not really even sure what's happening in the legislature because it's so unprecedented, right? Like, how are these legislators going to operate themselves, right? Like, how is session going to continue to be conducted? So while that's all happening, what we're planning to have is like exclusive webinars with legislators at the state level to get their perspectives, leveraging our relationships with folks who are policy professionals, and featuring them as like the experts in this area, because they are also figuring this out along with us. Along with the fact that our product is, it's web-based, it's accessible 24/7. We've really upped our responsiveness to customer support, because we know that our customers have more at stake right now. And so we've made sure that our chat support and our product tours and all the things that would help our customers and users get more acclimated and comfortable with the product, making sure that that's reliable and there for them when they need it.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah. And I get the newsletter that you guys send out for New York, and it's very useful for me. I appreciate it, because obviously New York is what we call the epicenter right now. So thank you so much.
Hope you're safe over there.
Will do. We'll, I'm in my nice 600-foot apartment, so it's very, very cozy. But thank you, Yemi, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to message number 4: go big on promoting heroes. I think this one, I just want to highlight one thing before I hand over to Paul, and it's really that we know you're not big brands, right? So you go on TV, you see commercials on things like, oh hey, thank you to the heroes from big brand names, or we donated X amount of dollars. That's not what we're insinuating when we say go big on promoting heroes. I think that kind of gets lost. And this is more going big on promoting heroes, helpful to your business, and don't do it just in a brand way, but do it in a very thoughtful way. And Paul, I should take it from here on some of those examples.
Yeah, Justin. So piggybacking on what you were just mentioning, obviously when the initial crisis started, to roll out across the United States, we saw a lot of corporations and larger companies, their initial response, and still their response has been, to put out, COVID-related messaging around bringing us together. And while there was a very positive sentiment around that at first, we're seeing that the sentiment is starting to go down. And so people are actually adjusting to what we're really experiencing is truly a new normal. And what this is saying, I know, so I'm in Texas right now. I don't know if anyone's from Texas, but initially from New York. And I know for us, thinking about how things differ from, New York to California to Texas, we're looking at, this could be something that we're in for quite some time. And so things have leveled off to become more of a normal. And so what we recommend and what this idea is really around from a startup perspective is, obviously for one, what are the subtle ways that you can call out, not just the broader community or the healthcare employees and the doctors and nurses that are at the front lines, but also your employees internally, your partners, your customers that are doing great work and are more involved with the community. So more so thinking about what's the good news that you can provide and put out there. And secondly, and not just from a messaging perspective, but really what can you do from a business model standpoint to really help people that are going out of their way to help us live normal lives. So Justin, I know you have a good example for us to cover on this subject.
Yeah, Agustin Gonzalez, he's actually not with us because his son got sick last minute. But just to give you a quick background, he is the CEO of Paranoid Fan, which is a mobile app that helps delivery from concession stands and stadiums to fans in the stands. So you could, if you're in the stands, you order your food and they deliver it for you. He has a platform to build that. Obviously, sports is not going on right now. So they actually pivoted their entire business. They took the software, they created an umbrella company, if you will, or underneath as Neptune, which they now use the same software, and it's a delivery platform for food banks and grocery stores to neighborhoods and communities, where they're delivering it to people who can't necessarily get to the store because of illness, or they're afraid, or whatever it may be. And when we talk about going big on promoting heroes, if you go to Neptune's Twitter account or you see some of the stories, they're promoting the delivery guys that are delivering. They're seeing the people that get the food and they say thank you. So that's a very organic way of showing and promoting Heroes on social. Whether it's your own employees or your partners, as Paul was saying, or even your customers. So people understand that it's a good feeling to hear good news, and it's good to celebrate the little wins in a time like that. But we'll move on to the next one, which is the last message, which is embracing novelty to combat boredom and anxiety. And I know a lot of people are bored and anxious. And if you're usually one or the other, or you're probably both at this moment. But Paul, what are your insights on this one?
Yeah, Justin. So biggest thing here is obviously with everyone's adjustment with this new routine, this new lifestyle. People are in need of new ways to combat boredom and to stay entertained throughout their day. So what can you do as a startup to provide content that is not only helpful, but also entertaining, engaging, and maybe providing education as well. So we've seen, with the examples that we've had today, that there are a lot of good ways of approaching this. So this really comes down to what can you offer as a business to really engage with your community in a way that helps to make the day a little bit more interesting than what we're currently experiencing.
Yeah, and a great example that we have for you right now is not only a business model pivot, but a content and messaging pivot. YouSit is a on-demand babysitter platform, and obviously there's nobody that needs a babysitter because we're all at home with our kids. Not me, I don't have any kids, but everyone who does. And YouSit has now transferred that into virtual babysitting to take time away so their kids could be entertained while the parents can work. And if you look at the quote here, you sit to entertain your kids while you work from home. So the messaging has already changed. And we're going to bring in Ifra Khan to discuss the pivot she's made. Ifra, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Justin described it best. It's definitely a huge pivot in the business model. There's no in-person babysitting. School is out. Parents are working from home, and they have to not only be employees and parents, but they also have to be teachers and entertainers right now. So that was, the non-in-person was a big challenge for YouSit, and we pivoted really quickly, like a couple days before social distancing was announced. And we made a new landing page. We messaged it. We used Google Optimize actually to change messaging and do A/B tests within the landing page that we have to see what messaging really worked, because we weren't even sure. And it just started as activities and sessions. And then the week after, we iterated it again as skill theme classes as series. So it's more of 3-week series, because we saw parents wanted to come back and be with the same sitter, and the kids wanted to be with the same group of kids. So we went from activities to kids learning skills to different themed classes like science and art, all within 4 weeks. Still iterating right now. So every, week there's something new, there's something that we can change. It's really about running experiments, changing really quickly, and growing from there and doing things that, other companies aren't doing, but really figuring out that the problem was that, parents are working from home, and there needs to be other things for kids to do, whether that be homework help or entertainment or a college student buddy. And put in a social aspect there too, because kids want to be with other kids and they want to see other kids. So that was something new that we wanted to do. Just changing really fast, optimizing that messaging. We've changed it from posting to Facebook groups to talking to corporate partners, changing our messaging based on who we're talking to. Is it parents? Is it human resources of a company? So that's something that we've had to do really quickly. But it's definitely been a success in the past 4 weeks.
That's amazing. And that's amazing that you pivoted and changed so many times in the last 4 weeks, and were able to find the pain point or the real problem that parents were having now, which was obviously getting the kids off their hands for a couple hours a day so they could do their work. And it's going to be interesting. I'm interested to see how it works when we can go back to all hanging out and playing, if the kids are going to want to hang out together after they've been hanging out virtually or not.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Aoife, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. And thanks for the insights there. That's great.
Thanks, guys.
All right, as we move on. So we did a little bit here from the consumer trend side, and then you heard from our founders when we talked about different messaging techniques and pivots. And now we're going to talk a little bit about digital marketing strategy. So when you look at branding and messaging, that's one thing that you can do from your SEO, your website, to SEO, to whatever you send out in emails, to how you talk to partners. And the digital marketing side is more about what's online and how should I be looking at a marketing plan if I'm starting my business or I'm trying to pivot. And for this part, I'll let the expert take it away. And that's Paul. Go ahead. Oh, I think I skipped a slide here. Let me go back one for you. Go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin. So to preface this segmentation, what we're looking at here is when this first all took place, we had a significant number of advertisers that were impacted heavily. Some were impacted a little, and some were in fairly sound shape. And so we found there were 4 specific buckets that businesses fell into when it came into with respect to the impact of COVID. So you may find that your business kind of falls into one of these buckets versus the other. You may find that it maybe is a combination of both, depending on your business. So what we'd really like to do is just kind of walk through each of these, discuss them in a little bit more detail, and maybe some of the things that we advise from a budgetary standpoint when it comes into marketing, and maybe some of the tactics that you can implement from a strategy level.
Whoops. There we go.
Cool. So for those budgeting, your business may have been challenged significantly in a way. So for the businesses that really critical infrastructure and operations are what's facing the biggest adversity right now. And so obviously from an advertising and marketing standpoint, when we work with the clients that are facing these types of problems, first we really look at, for one, does it make sense for you to be investing in marketing right now? And that really comes down to, do you have the cash flow? Do you have the infrastructure and the resources in place to be running campaigns at this time? Now, if the answer is yes, then we first recommend focusing in on the advertising that is going to generate the most short-term cash flow for the time being. So only invest in marketing channels that can potentially yield a positive cash flow within the first 30 days. And so this will be, thinking about your performance advertising, which is going to be your very bottom level. This could be, Google search. It could be something on social, or even ways that you can leverage the network or community that you already have that can be helpful in driving return for your business.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I think that covers it for this slide. So moving on to the next piece, we found businesses are also, some may actually be in a more sound shape, right? So for you, if your business has been, maybe there was some impact, but overall the boat's still afloat and critical infrastructure is not being threatened in any way, then we can think a little bit more long-term. So while we still recommend investing in the short term and thinking about the ways that you can really drive the people that are the most bottom funnel into your business, we feel like it's important for you to look ahead and also thinking about what does this look like potentially 6 months out. And so we've spoken to a lot of the trends that we're seeing right now. As we can imagine, as things shape out over the next 2, 3, 4 months, who knows how long this will carry on. It's important to think about, what does this look like over the next 6 months, and what are the things that we can do from a marketing standpoint to be ready for that. And so when you think about is also taking a look at the information that consumers are searching for? What are the ways that you can be there when they're searching for that information? That'll be very bottom funnel, but also revisiting your settings and what you have on the back end, the types of creative and the messaging that you're using. What things do you need to adapt to help weather the storm for the next 6 months while you're still in the process of assessing where the chips are falling?
Got it. So Paul, would you say so for the first bucket that we talked about, it's really only invest in marketing if you know you're going to get money back from whatever you invest in 30 days, very near term, keep the lights on, let's keep things moving. This is more invest, but with like a 6-month outlook, because you know that you are assessing it and you could withstand a 6-month midterm outlook. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, that's correct, Justin. So for those falling in the assessing bucket, what that's really essentially saying is we're not being heavily impacted, but at the same time, there's not necessarily a large opportunity in front of us, right? And so from there, thinking about what we might advise against is pushing, large branding campaigns, right? We want to make sure that given the uncertainty of the situation, that we're putting our ad dollars where it makes sense. So for one, being lower funnel, and two, thinking what are the mid-funnel strategies and what are the ways that you can start to bring people closer to the brand without putting a strain on your capital.
Gotcha.
Cool. So the third bucket that we're seeing a lot of our clients fall into is in a more so of a pivoting type bucket. So I have many clients where, they were focused on offering one offering and they shifted to offering a different product or service. And so we had some good examples that we've shown here today. And so definitely use those as an example of how you can approach that with your business if you're still trying to figure out how you can pivot your content or your business model. But one of the first conversations that we had with clients was, for one, what is the opportunity? And do we see an opportunity for us to shift our focus in a new way? And so for many clients, this could be if you're a multi-channel brand and you're sold in stores and online, thinking about the ways that you can double down on digital to drive more sales. It could be if you're a software company or you're a service company and you typically provide a service in a one way, but you have a piece of functionality or a value proposition that would be useful to businesses or customers, shifting your messaging and that focus and driving that home a little bit more than what you may have been focusing on previously. And so for one, we recommend looking at, your data and looking at analytics and also evaluating the search trends to see what does the market opportunity look like now given this new landscape, and how can we start to maybe shift our marketing dollars towards what our previous focus was to these new opportunities. So think about what are the ways that you can reimagine your plan, reimagine your business model based on the consumer trends and behaviors that we're noticing in the market today.
Yeah, and I think the biggest point on this one is really understanding when you pivot, the need for whatever the new pivot is, make sure that there is a customer base there when you're looking at that segment of new customer acquisition channels and behaviors before diving into it in a marketing sense, making sure that you have the demand for sure.
So this last bucket is really for the businesses that may have not seen any impact at all to their business and actually have found new opportunities. And so an example of this could be certain software companies that are not impacted by the change in behavior. Or, for instance, my nightmares come true and the dog is scratching at the door. So I apologize if there's any background noise. So, for businesses that have identified a new opportunity because of what's happening today, a prime example being the increase in content consumption. So if you are in the business of providing media to consumers or in the education space, this could be an opportunity to actually further your investment in marketing and actually take advantage of the increased demand that is really unprecedented for this time. So what this means from a digital standpoint This could be, for one, maxing out your bottom funnel strategies like we discussed before. That's really the first step. Then thinking about what are the ways that you can invest on mid and upper funnel strategies, display, social, and even branding to help get more people aware of your business in a time where they're more interested than before. And you can start to really build a relationship with them, not just in the short term as we're experiencing this now, but also in the long term. And so there's prime examples of what you've seen in this today. Obviously, with everyone here, I can imagine there's tons of different business models that you represent. And I think it really comes down to evaluating your business and being realistic as to understanding, for one, what does the data tell you? What does the opportunity look like? What kind of changes can we make to fit with that? And does it make sense, or what does make sense for us to move forward with?
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. I know we got 3 minutes left, so good thing we're at the key takeaways. I love staying on time, so we'll make this relatively painless. But the key takeaways for today, obviously, understanding the growing change in consumer behaviors and mindset. So we're going to send this deck out, understand how those behaviors affect your business and what you can do to kind of pivot your content and messaging based on those trends. We gave 5 different messaging ideas with examples from our founders. Take those examples, take those ideas, and really think, what can you do? And it could be little things, even if you don't have a lot of extra money for marketing. You could do content creation, and content now is scrappy. It does not have to be professionally made. It does not have to be like commercial ready. It could be very scrappy content from your iPhone or your Google Pixel, if you will, if you have those. There's a little plug. And then understanding your marketing goals. So as Paul was saying, be realistic, know where your business stands over the next 6 months, and then take the proper action from there for what your businesses are doing. So next steps, we're going to email you guys a quick survey if you don't mind filling it out. And we're going to give you more information on ad support from Google and what that looks like so you can see it. We have 2 more webinars coming up. Next week, it's Google Ads for Startups, and it's going to be around automation. So how, if you are looking to invest or your pivot or change your Google Ads accounts, we're going to show you how we're going to make it a lot easier for startups going forward. And then also, if you are looking to build your ads campaigns now because you are one of those lucky startups that has higher demand due to the new virtual world, we'll send out a form for that in the follow-up email as well. We are 4 p.m. Eastern time on the dot. I love when we do things on time. Thank you, everyone, for joining. If you have questions, feel free to enter them in the chat. If not, you can follow up with us via email after we send out a debrief. And everyone, enjoy your day and best of luck going forward. Hope to see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, no questions. So, Paul, we will sign off. And thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Perfect.